Hi, welcome to Hexed History. I'm Hex Tilda, and uh, Paris is burning. So, right now, I have actually waited a couple of days to put this video up and recorded different things every day because things are changing like hour by hour here, and uh, it's hard to keep up, honestly. But let's see what we can do. So, you may have seen the news that Paris is burning. It's not really burning. Bits and pieces are. Mostly trash. Because for almost 2 weeks now, the garbage collectors, along with many other members of one of the major unions, has been on strike. So about half of the neighborhoods in Paris currently have poubelles everywhere. Now, I was going to do a running tally of all the trash piles that we encountered while scooting around Paris, but I quickly realized it was going to be in the hundreds. Anyway, so we opted to hop on our scooters and scoot around the city to show you some of what's been going on. Now, this was filmed about 5 days ago, and the trash situation has only gotten worse. On Friday, President Macron basically bypassed Parliament, the second part of Parliament, the Assemblée Nationale, to push through his controversial retirement reform, which basically raises the age of retirement from 62 to 64. This disproportionately affects lower income people and people in jobs that involve physical labor. So, as you can imagine, people are pretty upset about it. In fact, 70% of the country is currently against raising the age of retirement. Macron thinks that he has a mandate to raise the age because that was what he ran on. But he was up against Marine Le Pen, who is pretty far to the right, and people didn't want her in power. So he was the winner by virtue of not being Le Pen, not because people actually agreed with what he wanted to do in office. So as we scoot along, you will see trash everywhere. It's piled up. They've even come through and tried to sort of organize it so it's not just scattered up and down the street, but we've had a lot of winds because it's March. In like a lion, out like a lamb. Well, we've been through the lion season, and there's trash everywhere. As you can see, the green bins, if they have green tops, those are just regular trash. Yellow tops are recycling, and white tops are glass. And that was my wife picking up some of the trash that had blown into the bike lane. This is a semi-protected bike lane, but we share it with buses and taxis, so it's okay. But obviously, there's a serious hazard if there's trash bins in the way. On the left, you have the beautiful Luxembourg Gardens. And now we are heading up to the Pantheon, which is basically the burial place of famous dead French people. And some Americans, actually. Josephine Baker. Josephine Baker was recently pantheonized, and she is the first Black American woman to be interred there. It was a really big to-do. It was very cool to see. Wrong way, you dingus. I turned right and realized we were going against traffic, even bike traffic. We're coming up next to La Bibliothèque Sainte-Geneviève, which is the library for the University of Paris, the Sorbonne system. That church in front of us is Saint-Étienne-du-Mont, which is the home to the remains of Saint Genevieve, who is the patron saint of Paris. I will actually do a video on her at some point because I wrote my undergraduate thesis on her, so special place in my heart. So we are now heading into the 5th, part of which is the Latin Quarter. We're not quite there yet, but you can see where all of the trash is all along both sides of the street. There is curbside seating, sidewalk seating for cafes, and I can tell you nobody wants to eat outside right now. No one. Now we are about to head up into the Latin Quarter. Very scenic, as you can see quite a bit of trash. Now, that building directly in front of us caught fire a few years ago, about 4 years ago. That is, in fact, Notre Dame de Paris. That's a big pile of trash right there. Now, they had hoped to have it ready to reopen in time for the Olympics next summer, but that ain't happening. They're hoping by the end of next year. But, I thought I'd swing by, take a quick shot, let everyone see, and then we got out of Pickpocket Central. So now, if you look on the left side, that is the 5th. That's the Latin Quarter, and you can see trash. Little bits of trash piled here and there. Now we are scooting along the banks of the Seine, protected bike lane. Love what Anne Hidalgo has done with adding bike lanes to Paris. As far as we're concerned, it's a good start. But, if you want some good content on that, I'll maybe link to Not Just Bikes, who is based in Amsterdam. Now, we're still scooting along the Seine. That's a very lovely building. That is the home to the French Académie Française, which, if you've ever heard them decide what is and isn't proper French, the people who decide that work out of that building. It's also a cultural center. Now, that's the Louvre. That's the south side of the Louvre. It is a massive museum. I cannot overstate how massive it is. It is an adventure every time we go. Now, at this point, you'll notice that there's not a lot of trash around. And that's because we are now in the 7th arrondissement, which the workers are not currently on strike there. They aren't part of the same union as the one on the 14th and the 5th. That's Musée d'Orsay on the left, which used to be a train station. So, interestingly, the presidential palace and the Senate, neither of them are being impacted by the trash. The union that's on strike does not serve those arrondissements. They have private collectors. Now, interestingly, the mayor of Paris has actually put up banners in front of City Hall that say, we stand with the protesters, with those on strike, and she's making it a point not to cross picket lines. This is a market, by the way, on the left side. Normally it gets cleaned up almost instantly after it closes. These things sort of pop up all over Paris every day. There's designated days, designated locations, and they leave a huge mess behind, but people come through and clean it up, and it's actually great. But because it's in a union zone, the cleanup is sort of happening, but no one's going to come take the trash away. So everything's being collected, but not being removed. In our building, we actually have a sign up in the elevator saying, please don't throw your trash into the trash chute, because there's nowhere for it to go. People have written on there things that basically translate to power to the people. Force aux grévistes, basically we support power to the protesters. Now you can see we are back in an arrondissement where trash is not being collected, because we are back in the 14th. My wife wanted us to go down Rue Daguerre, which is a pedestrian area with a lot of vendors. Also wanted to stop and do a little shopping on the way back home. And so here we are, walking down Rue Daguerre, and you can see that there is trash. It's not a lovely thing to see when you're trying to do your shopping, but I don't blame the protesters. I support their protest. I personally think that the trash situation is what will really drive home what's going on to people in Paris, but most people are pretty supportive of the protesters. Now, fun fact, even if they collected all the trash, right now they wouldn't be able to go do anything with it because we don't have landfills in Paris. We have incinerators. So the incinerators are currently blocked. The union workers have actually roadblocked the way in, so that makes it very hard for people to scab, to cross the picket line. So basically, it's complicated here. Things are moving quickly. On Friday, Macron pushed through his reform and bypassed a debate where he might have actually lost the ability to push the reform through. It was a whole thing. There have been protests all over the weekend, mostly peaceful, but you get enough people out, there's going to be bad actors, and people are angry. Like, really angry. And the French have a pretty strong history in what happens when they get angry about injustices. On Friday, when the parliamentarians came in to announce that the president was going to force his bill through, the people on the left side of the chamber started singing La Marseillaise very loudly. If you have never heard La Marseillaise, first of all, I'm going to definitely recommend that you go give it a listen and go look at the lyrics. But if you're not feeling like pausing and listening and coming back, it's about revolution. It's pretty bloody, it's pretty gruesome, and it is all about the people's power. So you have a aux armes citoyens, formez vos bataillons, to armed citizens, form battalions. Let's march, let's march. The impure blood can water our fields. Basically, it's not an exact translation, but it gets the sentiment across. Singing that at leadership is a threat. There's been some jokes about President Macron attempting a world record French Revolution speedrun. There have been rumblings about the need for a sixth republic. We are currently in the fifth, which was established in the 1950s. A whole complicated history. They basically reboot it every, couple of decades, normally. Very few. So, we're kind of overdue, but here we are. Things are shifting, things are moving, things are happening very quickly. People are angry. And when the powers that be stop listening to peace, it's not surprising that it turns to something a little more forceful. And on that note, I expect that this video will be out of date within 24 hours. Okay, so when I say that things are changing quickly, as I was editing this and about 30 minutes from putting it up online, I got a notification that the 2 motions of censure have been rejected by the Assemblée Nationale, and that the Réforme des retraites, the change in retirement age, has been adopted. Basically, a first motion that was put forward by an independent group was rejected by 9 votes. And the law that was put forth basically by the First Minister, Prime Minister, Elisabeth Borne, was adopted with the with help from the constitutional arm, 49.3, and it will now be put into law. Macron has forced it through. Tonight's going to be... It's going to be a really interesting night. Watch the news. Yeah. All right, well, everyone please take care of yourselves, and there will actually be another video up later this week. À bientôt!